I'm going to call this meeting to order. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? The flag is on my right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Oh, I don't actually have a clerk. I guess I do. Liz can do it. Yes. Can you please hand it to her?
Brian Sinna?
Brian Chena.
Chena?
Yeah.
Brian Chena. Liz Curry?
Here.
Kyle Dodson?
Here.
Charlie Giannoni?
He's not here.
Patrick Halliday?
Here.
Greg Jenkins?
He's not here.
David Kirk?
Here.
Alan Matson?
Here.
Keith Pillsbury?
Here.
Stephanie Seguino?
Here.
Scott Chomsky?
Here.
Miriam Stoll? Here. Ben Truman?
Here.
Meredith Woodward King?
Here.
Xander Long?
Here.
And Henry Prime?
Yeah.
Okay,
exactly.
With all board members, please sign in the sheet that she's going to be sending around. I'd like to welcome and congratulations to all of our new board members. This is the beginning of a new year. It's very pleased to have you here tonight and getting a chance to work with you. I am only here for a few minutes to get us organized as our policy states, the senior member, or one of my people said to me, the dinosaur of the board. But I will do the best I can in making sure that we have a free and open election of the chair and the clerk, and then I will go find my seat. We will now have the oath of office to be taken by the new board members. So could the new board members please stand, and our resident lawyer, will
returning.
You have to as well, yeah.
will administer the oath.
Not you.
No, you're doing it, Nikki.
No, I thought somebody said Charlie was coming.
Oh.
Oh.
No?
He told me last night he wasn't going to be here.
Okay, all righty. I'm going to ask you each to, I'm going to read the statement, and then I'm going to ask each of you to affirm by saying I do. And then, so we'll just, can you hear me? Oh, thank you. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Good. Okay, I, and please state your name, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of the Burlington Board of School Commissioners to the best of my judgment and ability according to law. So help me God, or under the pains and penalties of perjury. Please affirm your swearing to this or affirming to this statement by saying I do.
I do.
Thank you. And if you would please sign it, and I will collect each one as I go by. Thank you.
Great, congratulations. Now we come to the election of the board chair. Do I have a nomination? Commissioner, go ahead.
I can hold up my son. I'd like to place a nomination, the name of Ward 5 School Commissioner Patrick Halliday.
Okay. Is there a second? Commissioner Matson?
I second.
Okay. Commissioner Stoll. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Okay. All those in favor of Commissioner Halliday to become board chair, please say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Okay, election of the board clerk. Do I have a nomination? Commissioner Stoll?
I'd like to nominate Liz Curry, Commissioner from Ward 3, to be Ward Clerk.
Okay, is there a second for Commissioner Curry? Commissioner, okay, you have two, great. Okay, any other nominations for board clerk? All those in favor of Commissioner Curry as ward clerk, please say aye.
Aye.
So be it. Okay, Chairman Halliday, you're it.
thank you. First of all, very, very quickly, and thanks for the show of support, and I look forward to the work that we're going to be doing together over the course of this year. And I don't feel a need to say any more than that at this point. And certainly welcome to answer questions. The board, I'm sorry. Yeah. And please, you know, if I'm not running this smoothly, if I'm forgetting something, and Ben, you step forward and say something. Meredith?
I'd like to thank Alan for his last year of
That's what I meant to
service,
say. Thank you.
because I feel like it's been a really rough year, and I really want to appreciate your. Not everyone, a lot of people get talked into being chair, so it's a really tough job, and I'd just like to thank you for the past year.
So the board wishes to recognize, welcome, and thank those who are providing language interpretation of board proceedings. The board's commitment that all children receive equitable academic services must ensure that new American parents are welcome and can attend meetings, understand the process, and be actively engaged. Interpretations of proceedings, honors, respects, and values are new American parents and citizens and students. The board asks the public and media to respect and understand the importance of this interpretation. Let me pull up my agenda here. All right. So the next thing we have is an approval of the agenda. Miriam, Alan, second.
Yep.
Any discussion on the agenda? The only question I had, do we need to keep the CCTA update on, or we don't need to, I don't think we need to amend. All in favor of the agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have an agenda. Next is public comment. A quick note, just that at this time the board welcomes comments and questions from the public, including staff and students. We encourage you to express your opinions on matters concerning any subject relating to public education in general and the operations of the Burlington School District in particular. The board is very interested in the opinions expressed during the public comment period. However, this is not a time to engage members of the board in conversation or debate. I do want to make one comment. It's not, I don't think this is for tonight. We don't have nearly the crowd that we had a couple nights ago. But I just want to kind of put out there that we had, you know, a lot of people, we're very happy to have a lot of people come and express, to comment during public comment a couple weeks ago. And I know that that the budget is a sensitive issue that a lot of people care about. I do want to kind of just make a public warning, for lack of a better word, that in future time for public comment, we may cut short the, have a time certain end to public comment, or limit public comment just to 2 minutes, so that we can hear as many people as we can, and that the board can still do the important deliberative work that we have to do. It is important for us to hear the voice of everyone, but we also need to make sure that we move forward with the work that we have. That said, tonight we have first on who signed up, Maggie Rosewell. Maggie?
Good evening. My name is Maggie Rosewell. I have worked as a paraeducator in the district, been an assistant teacher in San Francisco, California, have my master's in education with a focus in social justice from the University of California, taught kindergarten and first grade in Oakland, California, and I currently teach kindergarten at Champlain Elementary and have received a RIF notice. I understand that you as the board have a challenging task of creating a functioning school district on a budget, and that the difficult choices have to be made on a regular basis. I also understand the predicament you are in as a school board that has had its proposed budget rejected by the voters of Burlington. However, what I am not quite clear on is how we as a community will be served by eliminating our highly qualified, well-educated, and experienced teachers and staff. Using the recent hires at my school as an example, we were vetted and chosen by the district as well as our specific school, which was not an inexpensive or quick venture for youth. We have received incredible professional development opportunities this year that we have all brought back to our classrooms. And speaking for myself, I am fully prepared to commit myself to this district for the rest of my 30-plus year career as an educator. I know that as the board, your task is to essentially cut the fat in the district and to make sure that all of our already limited resources are being used conservatively and effectively. However, eliminating your highly qualified and well-trained staff is not the fat of the district. This is a short-term solution that might make the numbers work this year, but which will create long-term problems for the district in the years to come. Teachers are not the excess. Staff is not the excess. There are other ways to save money that will stand up over the long term. I know that I am not the only Burlington resident and district employee who feels this way. We all ask you to quickly consider alternative options, which will make this budget work. My goal is to work as an educator in this district for the rest of my career, and I hope that once your decision is made regarding how to proceed, I will be able to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Up next, Vanessa Berman.
Is there a way to raise the lights in the auditorium? I can't see anyone when they're talking.
No, there isn't. We tried.
Okay.
We'd have to turn these off.
Hi,
Oh,
thank
okay.
you. I am Vanessa Berman. I'm here as a parent of a Champlain kindergartner with 2 more of my children entering the Burlington schools
Vanessa,
in
yeah,
the next
sorry,
3
just-
years.
Thanks.
I'm a little taller than that. I'm also here as a member of the greater Burlington community who wants to see our schools thrive, not only for the sake of our children, but for the benefit of the city and the businesses that choose to reside here. I will try to keep this brief and focus on what I believe to be the important issues facing us as we try to move forward with the revised budget. First, it's imperative that we keep our classroom teachers. The classroom teachers that are on the RIF list are those that are specifically hired because they have the experience in the areas that our district has identified as being important. Namely, they have experience working with ELL, they have experience integrating technology into the classroom, and they hold a value of being respectful and inclusive of diverse populations. Our administrators and hiring committees spent countless hours working hard to hire the absolute best, and I believe we have done that. We have hired the absolute best, and we cannot afford to lose these teachers. As Maggie said, it would be a complete waste of resources. This brings me to my second and third points, which are that we need to revise the budget option that the superintendent put forth to eliminate the removal of classroom teachers. And we need to have a revote in enough time to keep these skilled teachers before they moved on to new positions. I know that Miriam Stoll, my Ward 5 representative, has some good ideas on ways to reduce the spending while saving our teachers. I hope that you seriously consider these options and others before moving forward. And I hope that you move forward quickly so that those teachers who we risk losing will know the status of their jobs before it's too late. Lastly, I encourage the board and the administration and the principals to put an effort into better communicating what the revised budget would mean and what a no vote would mean for our schools. We need more transparency in this process. The community needs to know that class sizes would be increased. The community needs to know that there is a possibility at Champlain and possibly other schools that current students would be relocated to different schools next year. I believe that these alternatives will be unacceptable to many. They are certainly unacceptable to me. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Vanessa. Nicole Tuig. I'm sorry if I'm.
No, you got it right on the first try.
All right.
Like Maggie and Vanessa, I'm also a parent at Champlain Elementary School. I know you've heard a lot at previous meetings from parents at IAA and the other magnet schools, sustainability, and I'm happy that you've heard that, but I think the larger issue is that this is a district-wide issue. It's not about one school. This is about 6 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and a high school who are all going to be impacted by major budget cuts. And I think we're facing several issues here because of this current situation. From my perspective, what we're looking at right now is constant misinformation from multiple sources, including school principals. This makes our job as parents and advocates for passing a new budget much more difficult. So we really need to get some sort of consistent message out, as Vanessa said. But right now, principals are giving out information saying we'll have the same number of classes, which is not correct, and then they reverse their stance if you push them on the issue. And so people will think, oh, this budget cut isn't going to do anything to us, when in fact it will. It will increase class sizes or cause children to have to go to different schools. So misinformation is going to be a critical factor in getting a new budget passed, because if people think it's not going to affect them, then they're going to vote no on a budget. Increasing class sizes, we know from other towns and cities nationwide that the larger the class size, the larger the problems become for students, both socially and from an education perspective, because teachers have less time with students, and that causes problems. Families move to Vermont and to Burlington in particular because of our smaller class sizes. We don't want to see this change. Losing outstanding teachers like Maggie Rosewell. We have worked hard to recruit and retain the teachers that we have here. These teachers are dedicated to their profession and to their students, and recruiting new teachers takes time and resources that we shouldn't have to spend year after year. It's a waste of our money and our time. And to train these new teachers, get them accustomed to our system, it's to do this year after year and riff people over and over again just seems fruitless, especially for schools like the magnet schools that require a different kind of nuanced training and integration into their systems. But furthermore, we're looking at an unsustainable budget and future, and we need to find a way to address the budget that includes working with state government. I mean, really, when you look at this and you break this down, we were looking at a 3.9% increase for our school budget, and the 7% came from state and local taxes. And that was not conveyed to the community at all. That was 7%. That was state and local taxes, and no one understood that. So we need to do a better job of explaining how this all works between the government and the school budget. And if we can't do a better job of that, then we need to find a way to restructure how this all works so that our schools don't suffer. So, you know, as parents, we want what's best for our children and our community, which includes our teachers. And it's critical that we have a consistent message to share with parents, teachers, and members of the community if we want to get a new budget passed, especially if we won't be able to vote until early June. So, thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Up next, Alex Ruder.
Hi, I am Alex Reuter. I live in Ward 7 and I am an IAA parent. I'm here to ask the board to send a budget to the voters promptly. Please don't delay a decision past your next full board meeting, as it will cause more uncertainty for teachers and parents alike. I ask that the option that you send is option 1, where the other options would gut the schools and reverse the progress that's been made with magnets. I would also like to point out that the parents are organizing and ready to help get the budget passed. There's a Friends of Education meeting here tomorrow night at 7 p.m., so please come and see. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. I'm sorry. You want to read me?
No, if you read one and say
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Thank you. Heather Fitzgerald is next, followed by Tyler Doggett and Martha Lang. So Heather, and Tyler, then Martha. I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Heather Fitzgerald, and my son is a kindergartner at Champlain Elementary. And his teacher, Maggie Rosewell, is one of the teachers on the RIF list. I don't want to be repetitive. I agree with what a lot of the speakers before me have said. I guess I just want to say I think it would be such a shame to lose the highly talented, qualified teachers who are on that RIF list. And I want to ask you to try to be as respectful as you can to the people that are suffering from this situation. And I hope that you are able to find a way to keep all of our teachers and bring the next budget as fast as you can. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Tyler Doggett's next, followed by Martha Lang and Art Frank.
Hi. Four things. First, thanks very much for serving. Second, of the options that Superintendent Collins put forward, I strongly support option 1. Third, I strongly support you getting an option out to the vote as soon as possible. And fourth, I promise to work extremely hard to get it passed. I understand that getting people to pay higher taxes is difficult, and I think that's how it should be, but I think there's a very good case to be made that they should be paying higher taxes in this case, and I pledge to do everything I can to convince people of that. Thank you.
Martha, followed by Art Frank and Dan Lustgarten.
Good evening. My name is Martha Lang, and I'm here tonight to talk about Taft School. I'm of the opinion that low-income housing for the elderly would be an appropriate use for Taft School. It meets the intent of Mr. Taft's last will and testament. The city would still own the building, and income would be produced by the rents. We just need to start in and explore the opportunities to get funding. It is very important to explore other options than UVM for Taft School. Apparently, UVM's major donor has lost interest in the Taft School project. They're having difficulty finding other funding, and generally UVM is losing interest in this project because of the process and the length of time it's taking. I think it's a good idea not to let the city be left without a serious prospect. When Spinner Place was supposed to be occupied by both Champlain College and the University of Vermont, at the last minute, the University of Vermont pulled out of the deal for Spinner Place in Winooski. It was only Governor Douglas stepping in that prevented Spinner Place from going bankrupt. I would hate to see this happen to the city of Burlington. Excluding Taft School, I think the city of Burlington is an excellent landlord. City Hall, Burlington High School, Department of Public Works. There's no reason to think that UVM can do a better job of taking care of Taft School than we, the citizens of Burlington. There just needs to be a little bit more oversight on how the maintenance money is spent and which schools get the priority. Finally, by having the elderly occupy Taft School, there would be more residential housing available for families who want to move into houses, thus eliminating the housing shortage or starting to eliminate it. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Up next is Art, followed by Dan Lustgarten and Allison Seeger.
Unfortunately, I'm the minority tonight. I'm not looking to see teachers ripped. However, the voters went out and voted no. I had 3 children go through Burlington High School. 2 have graduated college. 1 will graduate Champlain shortly. I'm not against a school budget. However, no means no. We need to move on to the next year. I strongly disagree that we have another vote. And I know it's not pleasing people in this room. And I'm not excited to have to get up here and say it. I've supported the schools, I still support the schools, but there's a certain point we have to say no. It's unsustainable. We're running a deficit every year. People's taxes are out of control. People have said we need better school district, better schools to have people move into Burlington. It's reversing. If you go out and ask, people don't want to move to Burlington. Their tax rate is too high. Again, I'm not here, I'm not here against teachers. I think there's a better way of doing things. I don't know what it is, and I respect all of you on the board. I wouldn't want to be there. But I am speaking for people, because they're not going to come down here. We voted, the vote was no. It's not fair to do a redo. because we never do a redo on a yes vote. Why should it be on a no vote? Again, I feel awful standing here to say, well, people will be riffed if it really does occur, but taxes are high, people are struggling. You have to think of that as well. Thank you.
And followed by Allison.
Hi, I'm Dan Lustgarten. I have a son who is actually in Maggie Rosewell's class in Champlain Elementary. I hate paying taxes as much as the next guy. But the fact is that last year, a small proportion of my taxes, my tax payments, were well spent when there was what sounds like a very rigorous process to select teachers of excellence to teach people like my son. And I have been absolutely delighted with the result this year. To me, it seems outrageous, the nuclear option that the first thing that would be at risk to go would be the newly acquired teachers, who are fresh faces on the scene, who are incredibly well trained in sort of the latest understanding in how to educate our youth, who are deeply insightful about these children in ways that I think will carry forth into this community for 30 more years. So I would beg of you to do anything but allow those teachers to be cut. I think it would be madness. Thanks.
As Allison makes her way up to the podium, it's the last name that I have that folks who signed up in advance, we'll see if there are more when she's done.
Hi, it's me again. Alison Seeger, parent of 2 kids still in the school district. And I'm just going to assume that teachers aren't going to be chopped because, like I said the other day, I just can't even go there. But I do want to talk particularly about music tonight. And let me just look at my notes, of which I have 3 words written down. The importance of music. Music, I have come to realize through my own children, is not a privilege. It changes lives and it can save lives. And there are some cuts that are being proposed that will deeply affect how children learn music in school. One of those things is going to be that lessons are going to be reduced, if not cut. And when we talk about equity and equality for all students, if we take away free lessons for our children, then the level playing field is no longer level because some children won't have the opportunity to learn how to play an instrument. And the other thing I just want to talk about, I used to work at Lawrence Barnes School when there was not a dedicated PE teacher there, and what ended up happening because of cuts, teachers were running around teaching at Lawrence Barnes. Nobody felt a sense of community. The PE teachers never came to staff meetings. They weren't part of the Lawrence Barnes community. And again, if a music teacher was cut, that's going to put significant stress on the music community of the middle schools. There's not going to be dedicated music teachers for one school. They're going to be running around. And I think what Tim Buckingham and since then Graham Lambert have done is really produced a really excellent community of musicians at Edmonds. And I think it would be a very different situation if teachers from the high school are coming down to teach lessons, and if teachers from Hunt are coming over to Edmonds and Edmonds to Hunt. It would just be a very different feel, and I think it could possibly decimate what I think is a really excellent music program in the middle schools. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Allison. Those are all the folks who have signed up in advance. Were there any other people who, yep. And please just make sure you state your name and the like.
My name's Marnie Slavic. I'm a Burlington parent, and I just want to show my support for option number 1 and not options 2 or 3. I think options 2 and 3 need to be taken off the table. and I support as quick of a timeline as possible so that we don't lose our teachers. And lastly, I just want to make one comment. Given the events of the last couple of school board meetings over the course, I just want to point out that in a district in which one of our primary missions is equity, I think we need to be very careful at how the magnet versus non-magnet discussion is developing. And keep in mind that we need equitable resources for all of our elementary schools. Thank you.
Graham. Good afternoon. My name is Graham Lambert, the Edmonds band and general music teacher. I would just like to come out in support of you bringing a budget forward that is in support of new and effective teachers as soon as possible. And I would like to highlight some things from my personal experience over the past couple weeks after, this is a little low, after getting a RIF myself. RIFs are options for you, as Jeannie Collins put forth last week, but for us, those who have received them, they're insecurity, and insecurity leads us to have to look for other options, which is a very emotionally strange position for me, because I have 118 band students plus other students who I am in constant emotional contact with and creating relationships with, while at the same time I have a school telling me you might not have a job, and therefore I have a family to support, and that means I need to look elsewhere for employment. So that brings me to my point, which I really want you to keep in your mind as you're moving this discussion forward to a vote. As a teacher sits with a RIF is insecurity. A RIF means you need to look elsewhere while still doing your job. So it's an amazing amount of stress. I also want to push, obviously, for the removal of the cut, of any cut, to music district-wide. I'm in extreme support of this because it's in my personal interest as a music teacher, and because I believe that music supports another state of mind, a creative state of mind that is deeply needed, an experiential state of mind, a relaxation from the stress of tests, the stress of metrics, over and over again through classes, of classes where you sit and you work on computers now. Music is becoming a place where students drop the computers for an hour and they pick up an instrument and they do something equally as intelligent, if not more so, that is purely humanistic, purely real, and purely them. Taking away the lessons, which is the main part of the cut, I mean, that's how we support our students, that's how we teach them. And without lessons, we get bands that are playing elementary school music. We already start in 6th grade. Most schools around the country start in 4th or 5th grade. So in a way, we are already behind in that. So it's important that we have these lessons and that we bolster these lessons. We only have lessons in middle school. So when we get to high school, when we have traditionally high school is seen as the place to be, where we start to show what we have. So if we're not developing that in middle school, when they get to high school, our music department at the high school will also start to falter because of a lack of lessons. Lastly, as you can imagine, I've been having a huge pouring of support from my students and my parents and my community, which is another heart-wrenching detail to this. And so I'd just like to quickly add a couple highlights from some of my students. One of my trombone masters, Ethan, he's a 6th grader. Band is my favorite class, and I don't know what I would do without it. I would rather transfer to a different school than have no band. River, another trombone player. Band is my favorite part of the school day. Two of my saxophone masters. Learning an instrument is one of the things that makes us well-rounded students. Thanks to Mr. Lambert, we have gained tremendous confidence in ourselves as musicians and students, as well as having an enjoyable class time. I'll leave it at that, and I will see you tomorrow night. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Hi, good evening. I'm Lisa Lord, and I'm a parent of a kindergartner and a 4th grader in the district. And I'm here tonight, well, probably for obvious reasons, the budget. And as a parent, I've seen in our district that there are amazing things happening right now. And we have a whole bunch of new teachers across the district who are pretty spectacular, and our district has put a lot of money and time and resources into making sure we got the best people we could for the jobs that they have for our children's sake. And I question if we're going to make a lot of cuts, particularly to teachers that we have invested so much in. Where is the forward thinking for our district, and what does it mean? What direction are we heading if we start increasing class sizes and cutting some of the best and the brightest teachers that we have? And what does it mean down the road? What sort of a direction are we heading in? And I'm here in full support of option 1. And obviously I prefer we not make any cuts, but option 1, I know that the principals have all sort of come together and said, well, these are the things that we can do without. And I urge you to allow us as a city to re-vote and as quickly as possible. As we just heard, the longer it takes, the more teachers we stand to lose. So I myself am pledging, as Tyler had before, I'll pound the pavement. I'm gonna be meeting tomorrow night. So please let us, for the sake of our kids and our district and our city as a whole, in the direction that it's moving in, to have a revote as soon as possible. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa.
My name is Manny Dodson, and I play trombone in band class, and I didn't write a note, but I just wanted to say something about music, and just that I really enjoy it. It's also one of my favorite times of the day, and the lessons are really important. I do jazz band that's after school on Tuesdays, and I was having trouble with this song, and I went to Mr. Lambert, and in about 15 minutes, he helped me learn all of my part for I Want You Back by the Jackson 5. And I found that really cool, and it just shows how the lessons are really important and how music is important.
Hello, I'm Dante Seguino, and I went to Burlington High School 3 years ago now. And what I want to talk about and what I've sort of heard is, we've got a lot of real world problems. The problems with, I went to all Burlington schools. I went to Champlain, I went to Edmonds, and I went to BHS. But, my friends are still friends from BHS, but we sit around a lot of times and we talk about, the most successful kids that went to BHS never went to BHS. We were always skipping school or doing other stuff, which is not the right thing to do, but we have real world problems and they're complex. It's not about how much money you give people, it's about where the money's spent. But what gets written up in the paper every day is how much money they're spending, how much money are you guys allowed to spend. But you have real like actual tangible problems where, kids do love their music teachers, and you can't remove these music programs without seeing effects, and those effects are going to be 3 years down the line. If you think you guys are all elected officials, but the way you're kind of organizing your system is a lot like a company. Layoffs are the easiest way to show a profit quickly because you don't have to pay people anything. So all these companies that are failing because the economy is failing are cutting jobs, and their quarterly profits go up because they've cut off, say you pay the average person 45 grand and you have 200 people at that position, you've saved a ton of money, but you're not going to produce any more products, you're not going to do anything better. So what I found of Burlington High School is it was really do-it-yourself education. You had to find the teachers that were willing to operate with you to further your education. And I had a great educator lead me through my education. She's up on the stage with you guys. But having that abstraction of, where am I really learning? What's of value to me? When I wanted a new computer, I had to convince my mom, this is how it's going to help me in school. This is how it's going to, these are the, there was a dialogue. Here we have a lot of a lot of things are told to us. A lot of different things are told to us. We have leadership issues. I walked around, I was student body president when I went here until they kicked me out, which I'm the only person to have done that yet. Hi, Nick Molander. But, you know, I would walk around the halls and with students who I knew a lot of, and people don't know who Amy Mellencamp is. They can't physically identify her. That's a real world problem. You know, so you can solve all of the budget problems, you can balance the budget, but until you have a high school where people know who the principal is, because people think Mr. Sparks is the principal, people think all sorts of people were the principal, people thought Mr. Williams was the principal, people think Mr. Molander is the principal. But, you know, that's a real effectual problem. Kids only saw her on that first day when she gives her thing in here. People know who Jeannie Collins is. People don't know these faces and all. And most of the people who've spoken, other than Ms. Dodson, are parents and teachers. You need more students in here because, you know, they're the people who can feel that their education is lacking, and they're the people that are going to suffer from it. So you can solve 4-year problems, but we're only here for 4 years. You know, if you have a problem for 4 years, that's my class doesn't get educated. My class can't go to school. My class, you know, and that impacts Burlington as a whole. So that's what I wanted to add.
Hi, my name's Regina Farrell, and I'm a parent of 2 kids at Champlain Elementary, one in 1st grade and one in 5th, with Aaron Nolte, who's actually on the list as well. And I don't know that I can add much more in terms of meaning to what a lot of the other parents have said. I couldn't agree more. I just want to, what I do want to add though is that if cutting faculty, cutting staff or teachers is inevitable, to think about creative ways of going about it. It seems to me to be, just as a lot of other people have said, wasteful and completely unproductive to do first in, or last in, first out. That just, it seems completely illogical. And there are a lot of teachers in the school district that, admittedly, this is just my intuition, but I suspect would voluntarily leave if maybe early retirement were offered or other creative options were offered. So I just hope you can be creative with thinking about how the cuts are made. Thanks.
Anyone further for public comment?
Hi, I just wanted to add my voice to the conversation. I'm the parent of a student at BHS and 3 students at Flynn School, and I live in...
Give us your name.
Denise Haggerty. I live in Ward 4. And I just wanted to say that the options, I haven't looked at them in a while, but the last time I had looked, the K paras and the 4 elementary school teachers was the line item that stood out. And I just hope that that line item can somehow be added back in. I'm assuming it's in it's not on the option 1, so I guess I'm probably for option 1. And I also wanted to say, to piggyback, Amy Mellencamp is a wonderful administrator, and my kids have gone through BHS. We've been with BHS for 5 years, and I really am appreciative of her administration.
Seeing no one further to speak in public comment, we do set aside some time for board reflections after public comment. Miriam?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for coming and talking to us. We've heard a lot of public comment, and I'm excited to sit down and have a chance to really talk it over with the board. And I'm hoping that we're going to be doing a lot of that in the next week and a half. So thank you.
I'm a 4th grade teacher too, so this is the teacher wait time to make sure that everyone is had their say. All right, moving on. We have an update for board report, update on real estate. Alan, did you want to?
Yeah.
last Monday night, we did go to the city council with the proposal of leasing Taft, and the city council did approve this. So at this point, the proposal to lease Taft is at the following stage. The lease will be basically sent to the courts for the court to say whether or not it fits within both basically within their interpretation of the last will and testament. I know there was some mention tonight and also in an email that UVM was having potential issues with funding. I will have to say that's not anything that I've understood from UVM. In fact, UVM has been highly supportive of getting the lease in front of the courts, and they have not indicated to us at all that there are any potential issues with either their donor or their funding. They're highly supportive of moving the process forward. So that's where Taft is at this point, which was after last Monday night. And certainly if anybody have any questions, I think we probably can follow up on, whatever came from City Council and or, further status. Yeah, Mayor.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of our people in public comment tonight talked about UVM being less excited about the deal. Is there anything new that's transpired?
So
that's come to
I
you?
thought I just actually said that my understanding is absolutely no comment like that has come back from UVM. In fact, UVM has been
Nothing from the last time that we heard
No.
from the board?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for Alan? Moving on to the superintendent's report. Jeannie?
Well, for all the people in the audience, as well as anybody watching, I do want to point out that if you can't make it to a board meeting, it's a great opportunity to use a new tool on our website called Let's Talk. If you go to the Burlington School District website, Let's Talk is a button that resides directly on the website, basically available to you 24/7 for ideas, concerns, praise, suggestions, budget ideas. We will collect all that information. If you do choose to sign your name, we will be sending your question or comment to the department where you intended it to go, and you should hear back within 48 hours. If you choose not to sign your name, we'll still be collecting the information, and I'll be able to produce a data report over time as we start to use this tool. So it is a way to allow every comment to be carefully considered, gathered, and directed to the right staff. So I encourage you to get the word out about Let's Talk and use it at any time. Partnership for Change. Since we have some new board members, I'll just remind you of the purpose. Partnership for Change supports the Winooski and Burlington school districts. It is created by the Winooski and Burlington school districts upon the receipt of Nellie Mae Foundation grant, Education Fund grant. Its purpose is to create a student-centered Our purpose is to create a student-centered, personalized, proficiency-based learning system in order to remodel both high schools that supports every learner in our community.
Sorry.
You know what? Why don't you plug it into here?
That's right. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Every learner in our communities to pursue excellence. The initiative is funded with an initial 3.5-year, $3.7 million grant from the Nellie Mae Education Foundation, and we in Burlington School District act as the fiscal sponsor, even though the grant covers both school districts. There's a lot happening under Partnership for Change. We're halfway through the grant. We're in our second year. There is a lead community partner update and check-in. They are gathering and doing some college and career planning data from both Winooski and Burlington High School to create a comprehensive map of what's available for all students. Upcoming later this month, there are neighborhood learning conversations being planned all over both cities. Board members are invited to host and or participate. I believe some of you have already offered to host. These neighborhood learning conversations will focus on the proficiency-based graduation requirements in Winooski and on the personal learning plans in Burlington. Each year, this is our second year, so this year, for the second time, we are introducing a survey that the Education Development Center has designed as part of our evaluation of the effectiveness of the work that we're doing under the Nellie Mae funds. This student survey will be administered before April break, between now and April break, and closes May 2nd. Teachers will be surveyed the first week of May and closing at the end of May. We did add language to the survey to add descriptors of the Partnership for Change work. And the purpose is to assess student perception of changes in learning practices and to assess the change in teacher practices. It's a gap analysis survey. We do welcome Lindsay Cox back from her maternity leave. Lindsay, like you, is a board member. She sits on the Colchester board, and she has been the project director for the last year and a half and is just returning this week to her job. We had a site visit organized by West Ed to observe signature practice of mastery-based learning at Winooski High School and Burlington High School. It was scheduled for mid-March, but it was canceled due to the snowstorm, so it will be rescheduled. I'll keep you informed. And Hal Colston, the director of Partnership for Change, and I went down to Pittsfield, Massachusetts to look at how they're using a tool called a position analysis to redesign the job descriptions within their district to align with the work that is being done. And Hal and I are working with our folks here to bring this position analysis tool into the Burlington School District and Winooski if they're interested, and revisit our job descriptions with that in mind. Questions on Partnership for Change before I go on? Okay.
Is there an update, Jeannie, on the next round of funding?
There is no update, but we do expect to hear this spring. We hear optimistically that Nellie Mae is interested in continuing to fund the best practices out of all 4 sites as opposed to choosing from sites once again, but we don't have a definitive word. Our budget was submitted and we're still waiting to hear. Alan?
When they talk about looking at job descriptions within the district, is that within schools? Is it fully across the district, or how deep does that go?
It would be across the district. What we observed actually started with the student at the center, and then the superintendent was the first one to have the job description done. And then moving on to teachers, and all the way through to community outreach positions, to all positions within the district. It'll take us a lot longer than Pittsfield, but I think it might be worth our time.
And would there be any board role in that? I mean, if you're talking about rewriting the superintendent description, it
Yep.
seems like there is a board role there at least.
Yep, there's absolutely would be.
And then one more question. When you were talking about the site visit going into classes, which classes here, or what are some of the examples of who they would be, what groups they'd be visiting here?
Well, primarily our 9th grade academy, since that's where our focus has begun. We've moved into 10th grade, but primarily the 9th grade academy, into classes that are identified that have started to change the way they're doing things, that puts the student at the center, non-traditional learning practices. There are several.
Okay. I'm just curious, Jeannie, on that. Did you learn from Pittsfield any measures they have in place around accountability? They do the assessment, they find that it's pretty poorly misaligned. What student at the center would call for is very different than what the teacher's doing today. And how do they move from what the teacher's doing today to what assessment says students would benefit?
So you're talking about the evaluation, right?
Right. With
Okay,
well,
so that wasn't
the
Pittsfield.
process.
Pittsfield was the position analysis, but the evaluation is going to be a gap analysis for what the students perceive is happening and changing in the classroom and what the teachers say is happening and changing. And Nellie Mae, when we did the survey last year, Nellie Mae brought us together, all 4 sites, and we spent a work day digging through that data and identifying where the gaps are, and that helped us to set goals for this year. That will happen again, so we're doing the survey this spring. We'll come back. Last year we came back in the summer. I don't know what their timeline is, but we came back in the summer to look at that data, dig into it. And also, since this is the 2nd year, we're going to start to be able to see some changes or not over time. Okay. I'd like to speak for a moment about our equity inclusion report. Again, for some of the new board members, this is a report that whose purpose is to develop ongoing strategic plan and action steps to help us understand and eliminate race, ethnicity, class, disability, sex, gender, sexual orientation, and/or language background as predictors of academic success, discipline, and co-curricular participation by assessing academic achievement, climate and inclusion, and district resources. No, I won't give you a quiz on the paragraph I just read, but you can read that paragraph as the opening paragraph of last year's Equity Inclusion Report. I committed to making this an annual report. This report should be coming out in the February-March timeline. This year it is not. It is anticipated to be out on April 28th. We do anticipate also being able to rectify that for next year. One of the reasons, there are two reasons for the delay. One is we got a late start this year with an opening in that department with the loss of Dan Ballon. We didn't fill the position until November. We had much of the data ready, but we really needed to pull the committee together to determine what changes we wanted to make the report better than it was last year. So that group got started up in December. The other reason is we had some, we addressed some issues this year that had to do with transparency and accuracy of assessment of indicators and raw numbers. And there are two people on this board who have sat on that committee who can attest to the many hours the committee took on what should be in it, what shouldn't be in it, how low into the raw numbers can we go, things like that. What data does exist? Are we asking the right questions? The result of waiting till April 28th, I think, is going to be a better report and one that we can continue to build on going forward. So we do anticipate that coming out April 28th. There also is a survey portion to the Equity Inclusion Report. The survey portion was to be done last spring and was postponed at this time last year. So this committee has been working with the climate surveys that were identified last spring, working with a company called K-12 Insight to put them into survey format so that the data is valid. And these surveys are prepared to be administered in May 2014. They will go to parents, students, grades 5 to 12, teachers, as well as our ELL parents and students and multilingual liaisons. You might be a little concerned that it's happening after the report comes out, but I want to remind you that the report is actually coming out in arrears. So the report that's coming out is going to show the 12-13 or 13-14? 12-13 data. So that's correct, because we're in 13-14. Okay, so the report comes out a year after, after a year ends. So this report is showing last year's data. The survey that we're doing this May will go into next year's survey, and then we'll be able to be continued year after year for that. Questions on the Equity Inclusion Report? If you'd like to read the first one, it is on the website under our diversity button.
Alan?
One thought I'd always had with the Equity Inclusion Report, and I'm not at all claiming that it's one of the goals of the report, but was to have it so that the data that we were presenting would be available in raw form, in large part so that if other people wanted to do work on the data, they would have access to it. I think last year it was less than perfect on that front, but now that we have a second year, we're going to start having some longitudinal looks that we can do. Is this something that's going to be available if someone comes to the district and say, I would love to take a look at your data and do some work on it?
I'm going to ask Stephanie to speak to that if she's willing.
Yeah, sure. So the report is going to include the raw data in the appendix, and the body of the report will be an analysis of the various gaps by different group, but the raw data will be there if people want to go on and do a little bit more work.
Thanks.
Okay. And finally, I'd like to speak to our kindergarten enrollment numbers. As our kindergarten classes have been large over the last 4 years, we have started a habit of reporting out around this time of year. We do our major kindergarten registration push in March, and we now have some trend data that lets us know, give us some idea of what's happening between March and September when school opens. Currently, we have 240 kindergarten students registered. This is about 20 less than this time last year, right now. Only Sustainability Academy is full and balanced at a 50-50 socioeconomic balance. Integrated Arts Academy is full for families where either parent has 2 years of college or more, but it does have a few spots left for free and reduced lunch families. Edmonds, for the third year in a row, is very low at this point in time. which does concern us. We had a conversation today as administrators, because with Edmonds starting the process low, they end up getting overflow of kids that are late registrants who quite often are free and reduced lunch. And at the moment, Edmonds' free and reduced lunch count in kindergarten, just kindergarten, is 62.9%, which is much higher, which is the highest in the district for a kindergarten class. So the administrators are starting a conversation about that socioeconomic balance and how the magnet schools over the last 4 years are starting to change the demographics in the district, and we may want to come back to our policy committee and have a discussion about that for equity across the district. At the moment, as our, I guess that's it. That's the report.
Do you know the balance in the New North End, and at Champlain?
For registrations?
SCI. Has that become clear in the kindergarten class yet? And the numbers?
I do. I do. Thanks for asking.
Okay. Okay.
What I'm not clear on is if the numbers, I believe the numbers I'm looking at are looking at this year, and Champlain and Edmonds are both pretty similar, around 62%.
Champlain is also at 62%
Yes.
in the kindergarten?
What I'm not clear about is if I'm looking at current year numbers or if I'm looking at the registrations for next year. That's not clear to me.
And you don't know about Flynn and
I do. 48 kindergarten registration. Sustainability Academy, this must be the incoming. Yes, this is incoming.
Wait, is this numbers of kids or percentages?
Percentages.
Okay.
So I do now know that answer. This is the current incoming percentages.
Okay.
So for the 14-15 school year.
For the 14-15 school year of current registrations. So Smith and Flynn are around the 45 to 48 range. SA has actually, which is full right now, it's actually at 48.57%, which is amazing for those of you who work so hard to get a balance in that school over the years. Integrated Arts, which does still have some openings for free, free and reduced lunch, is about 66%. Sounds odd.
And then you're, okay, so, and you're saying that Champlain was 62.9 and?
Yep.
Okay, okay, thanks.
For kindergarten, not for the school.
Right.
Do we have the ability, Jeannie, to do any sort of analysis of kindergarten eligible students versus like, so just to understand the Edmonds numbers, is it the case that families who are in that sending zone are having voted no confidence in Edmonds, or sending their kids elsewhere in the zone, or there just aren't that many kindergartners? Or we can't do that?
We don't know what kindergartners don't register very easily. We don't easily know that. In fact, I don't know if you paid attention a few years ago, we had 17 more kindergartners show up in the South End that we knew existed because they were brand new families. We do have the ability of, we ask parents to rank their preference of schools. And so we do know how schools are being ranked, but that doesn't necessarily give us the reason. But I do think that for the sake of equity, we are reaching the point where we need to have the conversation district-wide about socioeconomic balance and not just neighborhood schools. I think we need to look. Currently, our school attendance policy says that if you're looking, that the magnet schools will be enrolled by socioeconomic balance first, then by sibling, then by proximity, then by capacity. Well, I guess capacity takes care of everything, but whereas non-magnet schools does not include the SEI piece in it. It's just sibling proximity. And administratively, we're having a discussion about what proposal we'd like to bring forward for the board to consider, because we want to make sure that we're not creating new dense populations as a result of creating integrated populations in another part of the district.
And we would be able to look at the addresses of kids, and to answer Kyle's question, who lives in what would be the proximity to Edmonds and where they're actually attending school.
I do have that.
I think that would get at what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. Might just be an interesting macro analysis to understand
trends. And then the why.
Correct.
Right. Scott?
Jeannie, you mentioned we were running at this time last year. We're 20 students behind. Do you have the 3 and 5 year rolling average and where we compare to that?
Yes, I do, and you do too if you want to go onto board docs and look at past years.
Okay.
I don't have it pulled up right in front of me, but like I said, we're running 20 students behind. For the last 4 years, we've been coming in, this time of year, we're about 260, and we've been ending up 300 to 320.
So
right now, we're at 240.
Yep, and so on board docs is I'll be able to find every year at this time?
For the last 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
Around this time, yes.
Do you mind just sending me a link so I can, where on board docs
Yeah,
you want to tell me?
I can show it to you.
Okay, thanks.
Absolutely.
Meredith?
Oh, and then similarly, you're talking about the middle schools and what's happening with the imbalance that's happening between
Yes.
Hunt and Edmonds Middle School.
We are. We're very concerned about that as well. As you know, that Edmonds Middle School is at capacity. The facility just simply can't take any more students than what they have. And so as a result, with a large 6th grade class coming in, we have asked 22 kids to move to Hunt next year, usually from the middle of the city, who normally would go to Edmonds in the past. It's a 1-year fix at a time. We're having discussions on infrastructure technology about longer term options, but right now it's just for next year. As a result of that, already Hunt and Edmonds both have 400 students at the moment, and Hunt has 60% free and reduced lunch, and Edmonds is around 45%, so they're already out of balance. A board long before you or me, Keith may have been on it, spent a lot of time putting those 2 schools in balance, and I think that's another issue we're going to have to deal with. Hunt is where there is room to add kids, not Edmonds, but we're also going to need to grapple with the fact that we could be recreating old problems if we don't start paying attention to the socioeconomic integration at middle school as well.
Liz?
I just heard you mention SEI, and I got confused. Did you say it is a policy?
It is a resolution of a past board,
Yep.
and it is built into the policy on school attendance.
So is that on the policy docs? So how is the decision, how did you go about making the decision about who to send to Hunt? And did it?
That's
in
in
the procedures associated with that?
There is not. Hunt, the SEI that's built into the school attendance policy specifically refers to the 2 magnet schools. The way that we determined who to ask to go, I think I sent to you in a weekly superintendent update a very detailed approach. In the doing of that, it became evident to us that we could not continue doing it this way because we will have a significant problem. And the density of free and reduced lunch population continues to be in the Old North End. So to not pull from the Old North End means that you're pulling from the south end of the city. I think that really takes a larger discussion. And I think that it's something we need to be grappling with this year before next year's assignments.
So just to clarify, the SEI resolution only applies to the 2 magnets?
No, the SEI resolution was a resolution of the board about the district.
Oh,
the
it is
policy
about
about school attendance brings up SEI in connection with the 2 magnet schools.
So the resolution was the whole district. And so I'm just a little confused by the statement that to pull from the Old North End to Hunt, the only other option is the south end, but there's the whole neighborhood that is east of Elmwood and Winooski and Union. So I don't understand why that wasn't considered.
Oh, it is considered.
And so I don't understand how you arrived at the decision.
I could take a minute to pull up what I sent you. It's not in my head. Would you like me to do that?
Sure.
That policy is JEA, by the way.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Meredith, while we're waiting, did you have anything else that you?
Well, I just want to clarify the policy because mainly because I remember the long, hot summer meeting where we came up with this policy. and maybe Keith or other people do too. So it's JEA, and at the time we were talking mostly about elementary schools, but it does mention both. It defines neighborhood school and magnet school. So, but I don't know if you've ever used this policy for middle schools.
No.
Because I think even though it doesn't say the word elementary, I think that was always
the intention.
The intention of
For the
this.
middle schools, we do use the policy. We use it as a neighborhood school, as a non-magnet.
Okay.
That's how it's currently seen, because there are 2 identified magnet schools in the district, so everything else.
But I remember the long discussion that led to the wording of the order of neighborhood school capacity, sibling in attendance, proximity, and SEI. So it does mention that. And magnet school capacity, sibling in attendance, SEI, and proximity.
Yeah, so it's the switch of
Yeah.
where SEI goes. I did find an explanation of how we identified the families to go to Hunt Middle School. I cannot tell you the date that I gave it to you as the board. It would be in a superintendent's weekly update, but I have an email around March 24th from Victor to me, so if that helps you find it.
Yeah.
First, we sent a letter to all zoned Edmonds Middle School 5th graders in late January or early February. By zoned, those kids might actually be going to, say, Integrated Arts Academy or a school that isn't normally a feeder school into Edmonds. So anybody who is a resident of the neighborhood of Edmonds. In late January, early February, with a February deadline, asking for volunteers to change, to move. So we first tried to find if there was anyone willing to do so, and we had an answer for 2 who said yes. That letter outlined the large incoming 6th grade numbers, the need to balance the numbers at each middle school, and the fact that based upon the boundaries, we have an imbalance of students heading to Edmonds, and that we would have to move the lines if we didn't have enough volunteers. So that left us with a need of 22 students to move and shift the lines accordingly. The new lines are contiguous to the previous ones. Victor then called every family within that catchment area and either talked directly to them or talked to them through liaisons, and has had many, many conversations in person on phone. I think every single family was spoken with. I know that. All families were given an explanation, and they also had the variance process explained, and that if we end up being able to grant variances, they would have first option to choose to go back if they wish. We don't anticipate having the ability to grant variances, but we did want to make sure that they have the first one. Hunt is also planning to offer a visit to those with the zone change to have a private sneak preview of the school before the May 5th grade school visit. Some of the data: 22 families, 8 are from Sustainability Academy, 10 are from Integrated Arts Academy, 4 are from Edmonds Elementary. None of them have siblings at Edmonds next year. That was the first thing we looked at. All live within easy walking distance of the present CCTA neighborhood specials that go to Hunt. That was also important to us. And the goal, using present enrollment data, is to have half of the students at each school in 6th grade. So what happened was, it is a large 6th grade class, but more than half of the kids were supposed to be going to Edmonds. And so that's why we wanted to split it up in half. Currently, this is a 1-year fix. Class sizes are going to be at the maximum of 25 per class, and we really need to settle on a plan in the next year for going forward. So I think, in answer to your question, the first place we looked at was the contiguous lines and the easy access to transportation before going further. Meredith?
And I also wondered, you know, something that didn't really ever come up when we were writing the policy was, for example, IEPs. So is there consideration in terms of each school and the resources they need if one school
Right.
has more IEPs than the other?
For example, Hunt has more IEPs, and we're sending a special educator from Edmonds to Hunt next year.
Do you keep track of the percentages on that?
We do.
What are the percentages for
I
Hunt versus?
don't have it for you tonight. I can certainly get it for you.
Okay.
Dylan, especially as we're working towards a multi-tiered system of supports, Dylan is doing a very close analysis of the supports in each school so that we can ensure, as we move to MTSS, that we're equitable across the district.
Okay, and is that also something that's tracked in the 6 elementary schools as
Yes,
well?
it is.
Because I'm sure some of the schools, and we hear from parents at
Yes.
Edmonds.
And to my
about those
knowledge,
issues.
every school in the district believes that every other school has more resources than they do.
Okay.
Would you like me to get that information out?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Thanks.
Liz, you look like you wanted to ask a follow-up there?
No, it's okay, thanks.
Just a quick clarifying, Patrick. So I might have misunderstood the semantics. These families were called. Did they have an out or an appeal, or they were told they would go to Hunt? Really? Like, could they say, I don't like? Say all 20 said we don't want to go to Hunt.
No, they were called and had a personal touch, but they were the families that needed to move.
They were chosen.
For the reasons given. They didn't have a sibling at Edmonds, they were in a contiguous area, and they had easy access to transportation. If, in that conversation, something unexpected showed up that we weren't aware of, that certainly would be under consideration.
But I don't want to go would not have been sufficient.
No, unfortunately not. That's why we went for volunteers first.
Gina, you mentioned that it may be necessary to refer the policy back to committee. At what point would you?
Well, I'd like a little bit more time with my administrators. I'd probably say fall, early fall, like when we come back to school. One more thing about where the lines are, and having contiguous lines allows cohorts of kids to go. Like I said, there's 8 and 6 and 4, so that allows, just like a number of Champlain families a few years ago moved to IAA together, that allows families to also have support from each other as they're, and kids to know kids as they're changing schools.
And I guess I'd just like to say that when teams are being made up at Hunt, that those things are considered as well too.
Okay.
So they're continuing in support. Miriam.
Just a question, harking back to Kyle's comment about the data that's available. Do we have data about where the children who are moving to the magnet schools are being sent from? What neighborhood school? So that might also be helpful in figuring out where.
We do.
So that would be also good for us to see.
There's a fun study in there. There really is. It's a good qualitative, quantitative study that really, there's someone out there that is looking for a paper to do it on. Yeah.
Can we find someone? That, what Mary mentioned also is interesting, because I can just tell you from the experience of being an IAA that there was a lot of discussion about which kid your middle school got into. And when you create magnet schools in the center of the city, you're essentially tearing friendships apart, because the kids have gotten to know each other now and they're all going off. And I know that kind of happened anyway.
Could I remind you that they come back together in 3 years at the high school?
That's great. But it's just, you know, it's just a comment, and it might give you more information as you look into the middle school conundrum here about whether there are ways to create cohorts that would volunteer to go to a school together or something. So.
Keith?
I just want to caution everybody that our policy, our philosophy is equity, and one way to get equity is social economic integration, I believe. And we need to be very careful about making sure we make sure we're clear on what the relationship, what the numbers are at each of our schools. And you know, we did it pretty much off by the seat of our pants when we moved Barnes students to Hunt. It was really because Edmonds had a large number of free and reduced lunch, and Hunt did not. And then we went to a primary unit at Edmonds because they had the space. Then we found out that certain groups of parents were sending their children to Edmonds because they have that primary, basically to get out of having to go to a school that may have been 100% free and reduced lunch. And to me, that was not the whole purpose of having a primary unit. We need to be very careful that we do not upset the balances within our schools, because when we get to that point, then parents begin to lose confidence in their schools, and our children do not do as well. So this whole conversation makes me a little nervous, because I know where we've come from, and if we go back to that, we will lose the confidence of the community. We will have parents sending their children to private schools and trying to sneak out in any way they can in the school. We've had teachers in schools where there was not a good mix, telling parents not to send their kids there. And so I just wanted, I mean, I know this is history, But I just want to make sure we're very clear where we've come from, and we're so much better now. But I think it's very wise of you to be paying attention to the numbers. And I can just say from my neighborhood, I'm a Ward 1, and we have allowed the university to expand, not grow housing on campus. So the neighborhood around university is losing family homes. And so I'm not surprised that Edmonds is in the situation that it is. But we need to make sure that Edmonds does have a good mix, just like every other school.
Stephanie, please.
So if I could just, I want to repeat back to all of you what I heard to see if, in fact, my understanding is correct. So what I hear you saying, Jeannie, is first of all that there is a socioeconomic imbalance between Hunt and Edmonds, but for a variety of reasons that some students have to be shifted to Hunt. And what I hear you saying is that the policy is constraining you from taking socioeconomic status into account, and that you can't do that until the policy is changed. So am I correct that you have no latitude to utilize socioeconomic status as a way to redistribute students between Hunt and Edmonds?
The way the policy currently is written, socioeconomic status is basically at the very bottom of the list. So after I go through all the other parameters, I can get there, which isn't good enough. When we look at the magnet schools, it is much higher on the list, and therefore siblings are probably the #1 thing we're worried about. We don't want to split up families unless families want to be split up. But after that, if we're looking at the socioeconomic balance, now as we enter the 5th year into the magnet schools, we will have gone from over 90% free and reduced lunch at both schools to either a 60-40 or a 50-50 split, which is phenomenal. The problem is that the board at that time stopped prioritizing SEI for the magnet schools, and administratively we are saying for the purposes of equity across the district, it needs to be a district-wide policy.
Do you mind?
Yeah.
Being new, I'm just going to, if you don't mind. So it was not possible to bring this to policy and advocacy for a policy change this year in order to address the problem this year? Timing-wise, no, it wasn't. The full extent of the problem was arrived at too late in the process as we started identifying families and realizing what we had. So rather than change it for this year, it is, because once it's changed, it is going to affect farther south than the old North End, and it really needs to be a larger discussion than something rushed through. We didn't feel it was appropriate. We probably could have gotten a policy change if the board was willing, but it wasn't appropriate to rush it through. And there are other options on the table that we'd still like to have considered that could help with the middle school imbalance.
Yeah, I was wondering if because it seems like it'll be a helpful part of this conversation, any objective measure of how, what are outcomes for Edmonds students versus Hunt students when they go on to high school, the things that people look at. So to get out in front of, at least as a board and the administration, understand that if a parent's saying, I want one school over the other because when I look at the outcomes of kids being in honors classes, being whatever things, how do the two different places, students sending from the two schools, bear out? Because it would strike me that people, if they perceive a discrepancy, if there is a discrepancy, that would further mire the process of thinking about the two schools. Whatever are the perceived desirable outcomes from the support that one receives in middle school, how does it play out for students once they enter the high school, and is there a discrepancy one of the schools versus the other? That might be helpful to understand as we try to understand the impacts of all this.
It seems like using some of the same metrics that we've used for SEI might be an interesting way to look at that.
Right.
Just is becoming more and more like somebody's dissertation, isn't it?
It's a great topic. Miriam?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up again. So do we have that data? It seems like that should be fairly easy.
It's not easy to pull. Yes, we have it, but it's not going to be something I can have for you right away. The longer the conversation goes on, the longer it's going to take for me to get for you. But we do have the data.
So what would be the best way for us to initiate a process to be able to see some of this data? Could we suggest a timeline to you when you
No.
get it back? Or what would be a good way for us to make sure?
I think that as a board right now, you're identifying data that you'd like to see. The first 1 or 2 pieces I could have had for you next Sunday, but as it grows, I will need to go back and talk with my staff to determine what data we have, how best to pull it together. Do I turn to a UVM student to help with all this because of capacity limitations, not data limitations, but staffing? Or, you know, is it relatively easy? Since I don't have that answer for you right now, I just know that the data so far being asked for, other than Kyle's, I want to dig into that one a little bit more, last one, but it's now on me to have the data and determine how best. I mean, you could give me a timeline, but I can't tell you tonight if that timeline is even accurate. I assume this is the will of the board, this data, and therefore I'll follow up on it.
Is there a person in the district who's in charge of gathering and looking at the information?
There is a person in the district who's in charge of gathering the data and running reports for us. That's not the same as the person who's looking, and then he provides the reports to folks.
Yeah, I know.
How about connect to that, Ginny, is there an internal function for generating the proactive approach to looking at the data? It seems it may not be the most efficient way for it to come up in a board meeting. I can only imagine, like, this was the first thing that came to me. So if I was if I was in a meeting where I was talking about this middle school thing, knowing what I know about the community and socioeconomics and where you live, it struck me that one of the first things that would be is if I was kind of like, better outcomes at Edmonds, so I want my kid to go to Edmonds. So that's kind of obvious, and it seems like there would be internal within the administration and the schools generating these kind of answers that would help us make decisions and manage the things, and that it shouldn't have to come up at a board meeting.
Things come up at the board meeting that I have absolutely no control over or can not always predict. That's the pleasure of working for a very diverse board. Something that occurs to you hasn't occurred to you, and vice versa. With the capacity that we have for pulling data reports, some of this data, like I said, we already have. The data on percentages of special education, that's already something that we're looking at within the district as we're looking at changing our model in special education. Data on where the magnet school kids come from, we do look at that annually. A lot of this data we already do. And then beyond that, there are some reports that for example, an objective measure for Edmonds and Hunt as they go into high school, we have been focusing on the equity inclusion report. You just added some new variables to that wasn't in there. So we run data reports on a regular basis, on a weekly basis. Actually, I get several of them. But sometimes you have to ask a question, it tweaks the report that you get. And until the question is asked, that is not all of these can I get that easily, nor will I always be able to predict what occurs to the mind of a particular board member. It's just, but I'll follow up as fast as I can.
Scott, go ahead.
To follow up on that, Jeannie, is you mentioned previously as well that there is somebody who runs data reports. You mentioned they don't run the reports that necessarily that will meet all the needs that you've heard here tonight. So the board better understands what kind of data we have available in this district. Could you put together, you mentioned that weekly data reports are done. I'd like to see, and I think everybody on the board would like to see, what kind of data reports are available, what's being done. What's being done on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly or quarterly basis. How many people, you mentioned there's somebody who's running the data reports. What's their name?
Dana.
Dana, okay, so Dana, is that, I'd just be curious, is that, what are her functions? Is it, or his, is it only to run data reports, or are they doing another job full-time and they're doing data reports?
They're also inputting the data,
okay.
Checking and confirming the data, working with the software to help create crystal reports as new requests come in.
And are they doing Munis reports and non-Munis reports, or?
No, they don't do Munis reports.
No Munis reporting. Okay, this is all legacy software that we have. So I don't know how you want to handle it, Patrick, but I'd be curious to know what kind of data reports we're actually generating.
So Liz, I'll come to you in just a second here. I think one of the goals that I have for the board this year is to really be a little bit more intentional in the use of data, outlining metrics, and then having reports back on whatever those metrics are to see are we doing what we thought we were doing, and are we being successful with whatever the initiative is, and having real data. However, I guess I also kind of question the efficiency of the meeting here of saying, and Jeannie, we want this data, and Jeannie, we want this data, we want this data. I think it's a little bit maybe more incumbent on the board right now to sit down and be this part of a work plan that we put together and saying, not that I want to see every single data report that's out there, but to say, these are the questions we have. What is the data that you have that might be able to address that, instead of just making your list grow longer by the second year. Yeah, Liz.
And I was just going to suggest that this actually be more of a project that go to ITC. Crystal Reports is very complicated. It's a really complex software, but I believe it can print the reports that you can extract from it. I think there's a function that you can do that. So, you know, maybe in ITC it could be like over the summer they could print a list of the reports that come out of Crystal, and within those reports, of course, there's a lot of data fields, so it just gets very kind of deep and layered, and it's a lot of work. But I would just recommend referring it to ITC.
Yeah, and I do hear several voices on the board saying, you know, data is something is really important.
And if I may, I really urge you, if you haven't yet, read the annual report, because it is chock full of data, and quite often it gets handed out and ignored. So it's a good place to start as you want to delve into the data of the district. It's out there. I'll give you a hard copy if you'd like one, if I haven't yet.
It's also a PDF on the
it is.
The website. Oh, I'm sorry. Was there,
I just wanted to say I do appreciate you bringing this issue up, and I'm concerned that I'm glad that you're at least acknowledging there's an issue, and that you are talking about it, but we need to make sure we have the correct policies in place and that we have the data so that we do get to schools that are a good mix of students, and that we don't have misperceptions about a particular school based upon its student population.
Thank you.
Did you want to say anything for the covers the diversity?
I think we're good now.
All right, great. And happily, we don't have to say anything about CCTA. So. All right, next on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. Get a motion? Yeah, I'm sorry, you had a question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if there's a mistake on one of the minutes, what?
Okay, so we need to approve the agenda, and then we can make a motion to amend. Motion to, I'm sorry.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Alan, second. Miriam?
Is this my chance to ask?
Do we have a second yet?
Yes,
okay, I'm sorry, Keith, second. Go ahead, Miriam.
So,
actually, Miriam, I'm gonna go back to Xander first, because he had already brought up an issue. Go ahead, Xander.
Oh, on the March 31st board meeting minutes, it says that Henry and I were at that meeting, and neither of us were at that meeting.
You missed a good meeting.
I don't think we need to hold that. We can just make the fix. Miriam? And then Alan, did you have something?
No, I'm all set.
Okay, Miriam?
So I just wanted to pull the 1, 2, 3, 4 names on the consent agenda that have RIF next to them, because I just had some questions about that.
Can you please identify the names?
Elizabeth Fahey, Sarah Minkley, and Sarah Marshall.
Yeah.
Those are the
RIF recalls.
The RIF recall. I'm not sure what our procedure is here. Do we need to?
Well,
No, I think anyone can just.
It's on the floor, so it's up for discussion. I had 2 corrections to minutes, and then I would like to request that we pull the March 25th diversity and equity minutes, because we just had a meeting last week, and I don't know that anyone reviewed those. So the ITC report, item number 7, there was a discussion about the
ITC
March 10th.
ITC March 10th, item number 7. The request to staff was to look at a trend analysis of the school-age kids arriving in new American families just that prior to that school year beginning. So the way the minutes read, it wasn't clear what the request was, but the request was to do the trend analysis of new American families coming this summer, how many school-age kids have been arriving each summer, and looking at that over a period of, 3 or 4 years in order to get a sense of the impact on enrollment, because the new American families have been relatively the same number every year. It's like 300 to 400 families every year. So the idea was that there's a baseline, and just to look at the school-age kids from those families that have just arrived right before the school year starts. And then the other correction was March 11th.
March 11th, what meeting?
Board.
The board.
Okay.
Item number 12. The language about the district's policy was confusing, and the clarification is the district's policy complies with state laws and federal statutes cited in the policy.
She's gonna be a good clerk.
And then I'd like to pull the March 25th diversity and equity minutes, please.
So our updated consent agenda has the minutes minus the changes noted minus the diversity equity for March 25th. And the 4 RIF recalls have been pulled for further consideration here. Anything else? Any other comment? All right, all in favor of the consent agenda as amended?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Miriam, would you like to address the RIF recall?
Yeah, I just wanted to have a greater understanding of the particular names that.
Sure. The reason.
Hold on, Jeannie, let me finish my question, please. The particular names that were on the list, so I had some question about why those particular names were on there, and then just to clarify that for everyone. And then also, I was just confused about the number of people whose RIF recall were here. I recall that on, let's see, March 25th, we first put out our first RIF list, and that had 31 names on it. And then we had a motion that passed the board to remove option 3, and all the RIFs that were associated with option 3 were supposed to be removed. So we got a list of 23 RIFs, and now there are 4 that are reinstated, but I'm just confused why more of those 23 RIFs, why there weren't 7 reinstated, since it went from 31 to 23. Why did we lose 3 people who could have been reinstated?
Okay, so when you passed the motion to eliminate option 3 and basically freed up the kindergarten teachers, that was 8 names, or 7 or 8. I'm sorry, I can't remember right now. And they were not issued RIFs. So that's not actually coming back to you for a RIF recall. We just did not issue those RIFs. So that's completely separate from the 4 names you see here. Okay. Now, the 4 names you see here is, as I explained before, we go through the process that the RIFs go out. Then you go through identifying any vacancies that might be in the district.
Wait, just can I understand your first thing first? So the 31 people on the RIF list, all of them didn't get RIFs? Is that what you're telling me?
That's correct.
Okay, so
I sent you the final copy.
Okay, but some of those
and the Free Press also had it,
all right,
who
so that's
did
the
get
missing
RIFs.
Folks. Okay, all right, please go ahead.
So then it starts the process of bumps or RIF recalls or things like that. These 4 people we had, based upon all their licenses, when a teacher is RIF'd, all their licenses are taken under consideration, not just the position they were in. If I may speak to Shalom for a minute. As a Spanish teacher, he also is licensed as a special educator, so he can be recalled into special ed, for example. So if there is an opening in special ed because along the way somebody retires or doesn't return, or maybe they were on leave and we have an opening for whatever reasons, these 4 people had a place where we could recall them into prior to, without affecting any decisions that the board has around the budget vote. Okay. The next step is going to be, and that's what you may also recall at that meeting when somebody suggested that you wanted to take certain names off the RIF list. you can't do that for this kind of reason. There's a contractual language that tells us who is in, you're riffing by position, but the names connected to that position might not be the actual position and alignment that you think it is. And so this is kind of part of that process.
Can I ask a little bit further clarification there too then? So I'm not asking you to say this is for sure how it happened, but this might be an explanation. So Liz Fahey, her job as an elementary Spanish teacher, that position was riffed at Champlain. I'm also seeing that Deb LaFave is retiring. Right. So that opens up an additional position example at Champlain that, because of Liz Fahey's licensure, would allow her to move into an elementary position as opposed to.
Perfect example.
Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. My primary question was I was afraid that we were missing 4 more people that we could have on this RIF
I appreciate that.
And I understand.
So if you look at your 2 RIF lists, you'll see that difference.
I was concerned about those people, so that's the primary thing. I do understand this. It is helpful, however, to hear that. I wonder if you might take a moment to explain to us the bumping, and is what you're talking about reflecting the bumping, or is there still another layer?
This is reflecting where there's openings.
Okay,
so as openings.
Can
so
you explain to us
what bumping is?
One more time would be helpful for me.
Sure. When we RIF Spanish, there were 4 teachers who were in Spanish. Seniority, however, in the district comes from when you were hired. So Elizabeth Fahey, for example, among the Spanish teachers, had the most seniority of all the Spanish teachers. But she also had seniority within the district in her elementary licensure, just in general. So she ends up being recalled to a vacancy, but another Spanish teacher, if the seniority is there, might have an elementary license and bump a new hire. That's why you had Champlain parents and integrated art parents here talking about the new hires. A more senior person in the district with a licensure can bump into the least senior position, even if somebody's in it. So an Elizabeth Fahey would not receive the RIF. A Megan Rosewell would receive the RIF, or Maggie Rosewell would receive the RIF, for example. Sorry, Maggie. And that creates a great deal of unrest within the district, because until that whole, and another teacher may choose not to exercise their bumping rights. So on Wednesday afternoon last week, the Burlington Education Association, after spending time with Sarah Jane Mann to really have a clear understanding of licenses, met with the first round of teachers who were on the RIF list and said, here are what your bumping rights are. Excuse me. And now you need to tell us by a certain deadline if you're going to exercise your bumping rights, and then that's going to create yet another list.
Can I ask for one additional clarification to that too? In the last contract, there are a handful of protected positions that were created, not protected people, but positions.
Right.
How does that figure in?
It hasn't necessarily figured into the particular cuts that we've been talking about making, but the language is that if there is a particularly hard to hire or recruit position, I think that there was a certain number of 2 or 3 that we could maintain somebody in the position.
So it's pretty limited.
Right, and so for example, elementary unfortunately is not difficult.
Right. Meredith?
So location, well, 2 questions. First, location is where they would be going into with their bumping rights, the place where they're
right. These are actually recalled into vacancies.
Okay.
You haven't yet seen a bump list. So this could even still change.
Okay, and I'm also one of the, I just have to ask this because it's something that parents are being told by people who work in the district, that you as superintendent have the right to consider how much time someone, how long it has been since someone was in the classroom, for example, if they're bumping into a classroom. So,
well, I would say that if that were the only criteria I were considering, I would be pretty quickly facing a grievance by the BEA.
Okay.
The language, which I also sent to you in a superintendent update, the language is around licensed and qualified. Qualified is not fully defined, but past practice has defined qualified as, you know, if you're an elementary teacher, there could be an argument of moving an elementary license is K to 6. There could be an argument that arbitrarily moving a kindergarten teacher to the 6th grade maybe does not meet the definition of qualified. There also could be an argument back.
And there's lots of confusion around that, that's why I had to ask it, and I just wanted
I
it
don't know
on
if
the
I
record.
just helped you.
I think you answered that.
Generally,
the
no.
rumor that's out there is that the superintendent can decide whether or not, even with bumping, whether that person is qualified
There
to go
is
back
some
into a
leeway.
classroom.
There is some leeway for
So-
the superintendent can look at
okay.
qualifications. However, past practices, that leeway is very slim. It's
Okay,
there
so
though.
that's the information I'm taking back to people then. That's what I needed to ask. Thanks.
Scott?
No, it just, to make it even more black and white, it's the union contract that we signed with the teachers union is, I heard people here tonight, and I want it very clear for them and everyone else in the community. We cannot take all those new young teachers that have no seniority and decide they're going to stay in place of somebody with 5 or 10 or 40 years of experience, correct?
Correct.
So I just want the folks in the audience who are asking us to do something, it is not within our contractual right to do that.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, Brian.
Just to, what Scott just said struck me, and I have a question, which is, it may not be in our right now, but in the future, when negotiating with the union, is that something that could be changed in future contracts?
Potentially.
So if the teachers went to their union and talked to their union, it might be something we can fix down the road? Okay.
And be careful with the word fix, but we can consider it.
You take that
But you're
one
right,
on.
no, you're right, Brian. I mean, some would argue that there's nothing to be fixed, others would argue the opposite, and I think there's.
I'm sorry, it just sounded like something was broken
Yeah.
today.
Miriam?
Just wondered, do you have a timeline of when the bumping process gets done?
Yes, it's underway right now. It will be done, I think, within a week or so because we issue contracts right before April vacation.
I just want to say something in response to what Scott was saying. What I heard people in the audience saying, I think most people know that the newer teachers, that the teachers who have been here under the contract have rights to maintain their jobs, and the newer teachers would lose their jobs, just the way the contract works. But what I heard people saying is that we should maintain teachers instead of cutting teachers, and that we should have an early vote as soon as possible to do that. And I believe the board, in the last vote where we gave up tabled option 3 and actually made a motion to maintain, to ensure that cuts don't impact teachers, children, classrooms, and teachers, that we already have made that statement as a board. So I would just ask this board that now has 6 new members to keep that motion in mind as we go forward.
Let's make sure we're staying on the consent agenda. David, did you want to add something? Okay, Kyle.
I think I'm good as well, thank you.
Can I move that we vote?
Please. Yes, I was just going to say, go ahead.
I just call the question and move to vote on the consent agenda now?
Yep.
Second.
All in favor of the remainder of the consent agenda, sending out the 4 additional RIF recall notices, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We have committee reports coming up next. And not everyone, we don't necessarily have representatives from all of the committees, or certainly not chairs from all of the committees. Anything from ITC, someone who was sitting on ITC, Liz?
I guess Keith and I can report.
I wasn't.
After March 10th, we haven't had a meeting.
No, we haven't.
So the minutes from March 10th were on the consent agenda.
Diversity and equity.
So we met March 25th, and
I just
minutes were
laughing 'cause you're the
pulled.
one who's-
We are, we've turned our attention recently to PBIS and at what rate it will be implemented district-wide, and we've discussed some data sets with staff that we would like to focus on going forward, assuming the people who had those conversations remain on the committee.
I'll go ahead and report out on curriculum since I was chairing that at the time. We used our entire committee, our entire meeting to talk about what's the role of the committee, and I think it makes most sense to have that conversation with whoever ends up being the chair going forward. Keith, would you be willing to talk about the proposed timeline for the budget?
Okay, I can do that. It's on your, basically it's on your board docs. This was the former committee. This was our timeline. Let me just pull it up here just so I can be intelligent when I talk about it, which is unusual for me. Okay. The plan of the former finance committee was to we met on what's today? April?
7th.
Oh, okay, today's the 7th. Okay, we're having reorganization. Tomorrow we have the first time ever, and I'm so proud of this, is that we finally have our own audit of our fiscal 13 budget. And the auditor, I've asked the auditor to come at 5 o'clock tomorrow, and this was done weeks ago. He didn't have a lot of different, he couldn't give me a lot of dates. And he's coming to Burlington High School, the library, at 5 o'clock. And I know I'm there, it has public comment at 5, but he's coming at 5 to give the report, and I'm hoping that we can have public comment at 6, and maybe we can do a flash to all the BFOE and parents that will want to come to this to sort of have a time certain when we have public comment. So we have a thorough presentation of the audit, the management letter, which is, I think, fantastic. It's going to give us a lot of information, and the future finance committee will have a lot of information to go forward in managing our budget. So the idea was to have the audit report tomorrow at 5 at BHS, and I'm urging all board members to be there to hear about our fiscal 13 budget and see the management letter, and that's been presented to us. This will be the first opportunity ever as a board we've ever had this done. And then the finance committee was planning to review the options and to start the discussion about the budget development. But in the meantime, as I reported at our last board meeting, we are still trying to figure out why it is we've been having running under budgets for the last, and this is the third year where it's happened, where we have a deficit due to the fact that within our budget we seem to have some things that are under budgeted in our line items, and we've hired an auditor to be working on that special, I call it a special research project on finding about why this is happening in our budget, so that our fiscal 15, whatever we can do to make our fiscal 15 budget not have a deficit at this time next year. That report will be coming to us. It's anticipated the report will be here on Friday the 11th. Okay, so I'm assuming that the finance committee will want to look at that before they and sort of talk about the impact of that report. We proposed a finance meeting on April 16th at BHS here to start to put together a recommendation for us, the full board, on the 17th. And that would be where we would have public comment and then full discussion by the full board about the committee's recommendations regarding the options and any other ideas that people have. And I would suggest if you have ideas, send them to the chair, whoever it is, or the superintendent, so if there needs to be research or actual numbers or explanations, that can be done so we have much more data for our discussion. Then the mayor, in discussions with the city and the mayor, they would be willing to have us go before city council on the 28th if we are fully considering this recommended budget proposal that we had sort of take on the 17th. Go to city council and explain what that is and get some feedback from them, and there'll also be people there to give a hearing at city council, and then have a meeting on the 29th, the Tuesday the 29th, BHS at 7 o'clock for hearing, public comment, and then a full discussion by the board with the action item being to adopt a fiscal 15 budget for the ballot. And the reason I'm saying if we do it that night, the city feels that we can have a vote on the budget June 3rd. They're going to go ahead and start the preparations. If we look like we're going to be able to get a budget adopted by this board on the 29th, they'll start the process, and we'll just give them basically the number for the the budget number the next day on the 30th, and then they believe that we could have a vote on June 3rd. So that's the timeline that was put forward by the previous Finance Committee, and with discussions with the city about how we could work that out.
I think it's fair to say that's kind of the working time committee, the working timeline we're continuing, and thank you, Keith, for putting that together. Actually, Alan, could I defer to you to talk about some of the initial conversations? Well, go ahead, what you were going to say. I'll come to you in a second.
First thing I want to say, I mean, Keith talked about not having an audit before. I think it needs to be corrected a bit. We've always had an audit. It has always been part of the full city audit. This is one where it's been separate for the schools separately. And we have looked certainly at findings that have come in when they've been part of the city audit in all years in the past. I just want to, stress that's the truth. The other thing I would like to say, though, is I'm going to second what Keith said about the value of being at the meeting tomorrow night, and especially having read the management letter prior to the meeting, because management letters are really what should generate conversation related to the audit.
I also have some additional information that I can give for the report. The auditor doing the special research on the reason for the continuing deficits is anticipated to have a report ready Friday, April 11th. The city is willing, as I said, hold the vote on June 3rd if we can adopt it by April 29th and send the information on the next day. We have met with the city and agreed to regular transfers of funds on a quarterly basis, including employer funds for the municipal pension, impact fees, and other fund transfers. That's the first time that we've really set up a regular schedule for transfer of funds between the city and the district, which is amazing to me, but we finally got that organized. The city's goal is to execute the annual borrowing for capital needs for the school district with the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank this summer, should the board choose to take out a bond to cover construction work planned to be completed in fiscal 15. We usually at this time of year vote to use our authority to call up a $2 million bond, and this will and usually what the city has done has gone out and gotten the best interest they could. This time they've agreed to go to, like they did with the water department last fall, I guess. They've agreed that we will go to the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank, and we should be able to get a better bond rate than we have in the past. So I'm really pleased that they're willing to work with us on that. The auditor will report tomorrow night, and I really urge you to be able to come and hear that report. Although I know that, Ellen and I disagree. We did have, but it was all mixed in with the city, and I think this is a much more thorough report on our budget, and the management letter is really clear to what we have to do, and this is the time the city, the board members are actually going to hear and ask a lot of questions, I hope, tomorrow night.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's go, Liz, please.
Just a quick question, Keith, on the timeline for the finance committee meetings.
Right.
So after tomorrow, the next one would be.
Okay, I'm no longer, or I don't believe I'm going to be chair. So you basically have a report on the 11th. So you can either meet on the 16th and get that report and make some decisions then, or maybe meet before then.
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry. I thought I heard you say something about the 11th, which is a Friday.
No, I said the report will be coming to us on the 11th, and the idea, my idea would have been that we try to work before the 16th, but that's up to the new board, finance board.
Scott, did you want to add something?
I just want to make the point. I appreciate the report that Keith gave, but I also just want to clarify that options 1 and 2 are still on the table. The report seemed to indicate about a likely vote that's going to happen. as far as I knew, is we were still considering both options, including the default budget.
Oh, I don't think I should, don't ever
Okay.
misinterpret that. Everything's open.
Right, no, just for the community who, it's not a foregone conclusion that we're definitely going back for a vote. We're keeping all our options open here.
That's true.
Thank you.
Meredith, did you want to?
I just wanted to ask you, what your plans are for announcing the chair and the finance committee and the other chairs, so that we can move forward.
It will be very soon, like within the next 12 hours.
Okay.
There are a few people I still need to talk to, and I don't want to be premature, that I didn't want to be presumptuous tonight of anything, so.
And I also just want to clarify what the board voted on when we tabled option 3, and we were considering options 1 and 2, that, to me, that assumes there's a vote.
Well, option 2 wouldn't require.
Right, that's a default budget.
So that would be the default budget. We wouldn't, I think
Right.
the only thing that we voted was to take option 3 as proposed to us off the table, which my numbers may be off here, but was about $4 million below the default budget. We said, no, we're not going to go $4 million below the default budget, and I really think that's about the only thing that we agreed to by taking option 3 off the table.
Right, so, but we did ask to curb cuts on children, classrooms, and teachers, and that to me assumes a vote, because the default budget would go so deep that you would have to cut, you'd have to cut in those areas, I think.
Maybe, there are other things I think that, conceivally we could cut that wouldn't influence the classroom, the 8 to 3 classroom. I mean, I'm not suggesting that we do those, but I think there are other things that could be cut that wouldn't result in reduction of teachers, but could be fairly.
But might have an impact on children in classrooms, because that's what our vote said. So
Yeah,
we can talk about that
yeah.
later, but I just wanted to clarify that. We did take a vote, so.
Brian?
In the public comment, I heard a lot of people say that they were concerned about the timeline. And I know that the finance committee hasn't been determined yet, but I guess whoever's on it, I think we need to be conscious of that. And I don't know, maybe this is the best we can do. Maybe this is the quickest it can happen, because I am new. But I guess I just want us to be mindful of the impact, like, delaying it is causing. So, just want to express that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, and I think we're aware of it, and that was also part of the motion that was passed at the last meeting, to if we go to a vote, to get the vote as quickly as possible. Miriam?
Just 2 things. I wanted to just mention that Keith was talking about the audit report. So for those of you who don't know, it is listed in the finance meeting for tomorrow night. If you go to the agenda, you can see the full report. And that's also available for anyone in the public to look at as well. So that's good to do. And then the other thing, Keith, I just wanted to ask you a question about the vote. I recall that at the last finance meeting, you had said that there was new information that that we had to have a vote even if we went to a default level budget. Is that correct?
Well, this is where I'm a little bit confused in the sense that I did hear from Joe's last opinion was that we really did need to have a second vote.
Correct. He indicated that state statute, wording of state statute, is that there will be a second vote.
Yes, and so if we're down to the default budget, we're going to have a final legal decision on whether we need to go out and vote on that budget. But I wasn't going to argue about that tonight, because he said one thing and then he changed, then he said it again a different way. So
that would be good information to clarify. That would be possible.
His latest opinion is that we do.
That's what I got the impression, but I wanted to make sure that if we got to that point that Scott's talking about, whether or not, then we need to make sure we have a legal opinion that we do need to.
Right, I don't think I'll have a different answer tomorrow.
Okay.
Meredith, you had something else you wanted to ask?
Oh, I mean, I thought, I was trying to find the motion, if anyone has it.
I have it right here.
Doesn't it say that we should have an early, a vote in
So,
early June?
move to take option 3 budget cut of 4.124 million off the table and solely focus on a budget whose cuts will not go below the default budget, readjusting the RIF list and proposed option 1 and 2 budgets in order to lessen the impact on children, classrooms, and teachers, as well as continue to build the budget through the lens of equity, inclusion, and financial sustainability. In addition, we ask the administration to move the budget vote to early June.
So the motion actually said we would have a vote. And what date was that made?
That was on the 25th.
Okay, so does the new board have to honor that motion? Okay, so that's the answer, right? And we have a legal opinion saying we're having a vote. So we're having a vote is what the way I hear it.
I think that's right. Without, I guess, I don't think Joe's here.
We're gonna have to meet,
but
when we get to that point, I think we'll just have to make sure we have it.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Scott, did you have a question?
I guess what I am not understanding is any motion that was passed by the previous deliberative body of this organization is that we can change policy, we can change our mission statement, we can change anything about what previous boards have decided. Is that regardless of what motion was taken before, if this new board decides to take a stand, we can take that stand.
I think there's timelines in Robert's rules and things like that, and when you can, and it has to be somebody who made the motion, who brings it back, that kind of thing, so we might look at that.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to suggest that we not get into a lengthy discussion on the FY15 budget tonight. I think we have time for that tomorrow and probably a couple more meetings between now and the 18th, 19th, whenever our final movement that we're trying to go. And I don't think that would necessarily be a productive discussion tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward.
Pat, can I just?
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
Actually, I wanted, go ahead, and then I have a question for you or Scott, too.
Yeah, I kind of want to highlight again that it kind of came up both in the ITC minutes and a little bit of a discussion here in finance about planning for summer work requires bidding to go out fairly soon, and if one of the things that this board were to think about is possibly not asking for the $2 million in the next year, this will be something that we would have to understand fairly quickly if I understand the timing correct. So I think that I want to make sure that we are thinking about all these things in the right sort of time frame so that we don't go out to bid for something that we don't end up financing.
Thanks for mentioning that, Alan. The city has already told me that they would want our decision, board action on the bond before the April break so that they could go out to the bond bank at an appropriate time. They're doing it earlier as they go to the municipal bond bank this year. So really it's your next full special board meeting that would have to be decided by.
Thank you.
Alan or Scott or I think there's a third person
Stephanie.
who met with
Stephanie,
who met with the auditors looking at the ongoing deficit. Is there anything that's
I'm going to go fairly short here, but just to say that what we tried to state as being the primary focus and just having an agreement with Scott McIntyre from Ellenson Heath was that the key answer is, do we have a good set of assumptions for the fiscal 15 budget, or do we need to make some adjustments? There are certainly some historical questions we have asked, and we will probably want some work on as well, but the timely answer of that other question is really what we stressed, and we said that takes precedence over the other things that you may see in here, and that was a focus. And again, I think Scott will be here tomorrow night, so if we want to ask a few more questions as a group, I think that would be okay as well.
Stephanie, did you want to add anything to that?
No.
Scott? All right, moving forward. I'll wake up my computer. So I've asked Miriam to, since Linda has left the board, the Policy Advocacy Committee has done a lot of work pulling together updating all sorts of policies, and we have several that are up for first reading and review tonight. So, go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess would just like to quickly explain to the new board members that what Linda sort of led the policy committee in doing over the last year was to look through all the required policies. There's a set of policies that all school districts have to have, and to make sure that they were in keeping with, you know, what's expected through state law, and also that they were to our liking. And as part of that, the goal was to reduce the length of the policies and to take the procedures out of it. Because over time, as you make policies, you add more and more things each time a particular issue comes up, and you end up with a policy that's hard to effectuate because it's so detailed. So this was the goal of the Policy and Advocacy Committee. So we've been going through the set of required policies and do that. Each time we've come up with a few that have been read. And at this point, Patrick, maybe you can help me here, or Jeannie, but I believe that each policy has to have 2 readings. Is that correct?
2 readings at least 30 days apart, which means the ones that you approved on March 11th for first reading could not come back tonight. They have to come back in May.
Okay. And then one that says it's for review, does that mean that?
That means that the policy committee looked at the policy, looked at the model policy of VSBA, and chose not to make changes to our policy. So it's just simply, there's no action to be taken on those. The only action, unless somebody disagrees.
Okay.
The only action is on the first readings.
Okay, so in a moment, I'll make a motion to adopt all of these as a whole, but what I'm doing here is the ones that say policy for review, that would be number F, the diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. That's just simply saying we're happy with our policy and we're keeping it. And I believe that was just redone recently, wasn't that correct, Liz? That was, and that would be the same for policy C, which is board organizational meeting for review meeting. And then the other 2, A, B, D, actually one more of that. Prevention of bullying is also up for review. So those are the 4 that are just for review.
D, wellness.
Yeah. And then there are 2 here that are first readings, which means that we're all looking at them and we have to come back in 30 days and read them again anyway. So I'd like to move that we accept all the policies that are here in, Ben, can you help me with the words? What's the correct way to say this?
That's the, I would say, move items A and B for first reading.
For first reading, and items C through F for review.
You don't have to move the review, but that's okay.
You just accept that.
Do we have a second? Ben? And any discussion on the 2 policies, JICFA and JQ? Al?
I did have a question, JQ, because there's sort of almost like a note in there on JQ, and I didn't know if there had been resolution or if there was.
Oh, yeah, there was.
You know, and if there is resolution, what it would be. Committee needs to decide if this policy shall be expanded to include all surveys conducted by the district regardless of funding source?
Yeah, the decision was yes, it would be.
Okay.
So thank you for catching that. I'll have that obviously removed.
Thank you.
Anything further? All in favor of first reading for JICFA and policy JQ, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and the other 4 will be brought forward for review. I don't think there's anything to come out of planning committee right now. Alan, is there anything that you can think of as we go?
Do you need?
Do we need, yeah. And so at this point, I'd like to entertain a motion to consider an executive session for the purpose of discussing a student discipline matter where premature disclosure could place the school district at a substantial disadvantage. Yep, Meredith and Stephanie second. All in favor?
Aye.
So we'll go into executive session now.